All right, well, first off, let me get the picture. First off, thank you for joining us tonight. David and Christian and Leah, we really appreciate it. This is Ball State Architecture and Planning, MArch, Masters of Architecture, what are we, Pro Practice, ARCH620. I can never remember the number. And so really appreciate you joining us tonight. I think, well, some of us that had the conversation, one of the things that we're doing in this class is basically running Pro Practice as a startup incubator. Okay, so each of the students, whether they're doing it in a team or they're doing it individually, they're coming up with a business idea, they're coming up with a business plan, and we're gonna have our own version of Shark Tank come December, and so they're gonna pitch their businesses. The other thing that's happening is, as you know, I charged our students to come up with ideas for guest speakers, and that's where you guys come in. And so again, appreciate you being our speakers for tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Kyle and Jordan and let them do introductions. They've got questions to help spur the conversation. And then, of course, anybody that has questions, it's going to be harder to hear, I think, up here in this space. So maybe if you have a question or something, you might want to come closer so our guest speakers can hear. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to the guys.
So in the bottom right corner, we have Christian Jordan. He is a principal architect at PJA Architects and also a founder of the JAMB Collective. He graduated from Philadelphia University in 2005, the Bachelor of Architecture. He also currently serves as adjunct faculty at Jefferson University in Pennsylvania and was awarded in 2017 the AIA Pennsylvania Emerging Professional Award.
Can you hear that okay? Our speakers, sorry.
That was fabulous. It was as if I wrote it myself. Thank you.
On the bottom left, we have Leah Baier. She's an award-winning architect licensed in California, Hawaii, and Washington. In 2014, she graduated with a Bachelor of Architecture, a minor in Fine Arts, and 4 years of structural engineering from Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. She started EVIA Studio, which is a highly collaborative, 100% women-owned and run interdisciplinary design firm specializing in future-minded custom homes. And EVIA Studio is also a part of the JAMB Collective.
In the top left, we have David Bolt. David is the President of GMB Architecture and Engineering. He graduated from the University of Michigan with an MArch degree and also graduated from Calvin University with a Bachelor of Art in Business. David joined GMB in 2003 as an architectural intern and has since then held the president position for 5 years. He's passionate about equipping teams with an environment that facilitates learning, growing, and giving.
Okay, so to begin, first question, I guess, is, well, just briefly introduce your firm, what you do, and then our topic of the week is legal entities. And so if you could just touch on the legal entity of makeup of your firm, and then why you chose that. And then we can start with Christian.
Okay, sure. If you don't mind, could I spin it back on you just for like 3 minutes and let me know about Kyle and Jordan?
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
So introduce yourself.
Oh, so I'm Jordan Jones. I am currently in the Architecture program. Originally from Indianapolis, I've always lived here. I decided to take a year off of school to work, but then I obviously came back.
I'm Kyle Jordan from Crown Point, Indiana. I went to Jefferson University, and I took a year off to work at GMB, and now I'm working at CSO Architects.
Okay. And you guys together are making up one team, little pitch in December, correct?
No, so actually our teams for this are different than our business teams.
Okay.
I'm actually going after one, but
okay.
Kyle's with
all right.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So Christian.
Okay. Well, we'll try to share. Yeah.
So I'm over here somewhere. I gave them the option on their projects to go it alone, to find a teammate to work with, or to try to lobby the entire class to do the project together. And so we've got the split between loners and small teams.
Okay. Great. Yeah, that's helpful. So yeah, okay, a little bit about me that you guys didn't already touch on in the introduction. So I am 45% owner of PJA Architecture. It was originally founded by my dad, Phil Jordan, in 1993, and he ran that as a sole proprietor until I was licensed in 2012. And at that point, we decided to partner up. And we had to make some decisions on what our company was going to be in the legal entity standpoint. We chose an S Corp, so S is in Sam, S Corporation, and we initiated a 10-year first phase of our succession plan, where I was buying in 5% a year for 10 years. And the idea would be that after 10 years, I would be majority owner. He would start to kind of phase himself out, and we would enter this phase 2 of the ownership transition. So we're a year away from that. The reason that we settled on an S Corp, so when we first decided we were going to partner up, we brought to the table our business attorney, our accountant, our financial planner, and basically said, this is what we'd like to do. What do you all think is the best path forward from a tax benefit perspective, financial planning, liability, all of that? Because up until this point, Phil had only ever run it as a sole proprietor, and I was looking to get involved, and we were looking to protect ourselves and our families. And so the S Corp allows for 100 shareholders maximum. We have 100 shares. I have 45 at the moment. He has 55. It is a pass-through entity, which means that our profits and losses move through the company to us, and we file them on our individual tax returns. And there's also a 20% like business income deduction that just comes right off the top. So for a couple different reasons, we decided the S Corp was the way to go in protecting us personally, and then also how do we structure like the ownership and make it as clean as possible, knowing that it was a business decision between the two of us. That's kind of so that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. And then Leah, you can touch on EVIA, the studio. I apologize if I'm saying it incorrectly.
You've got it right. It's EVIA Studio, and I'm Leah. It kind of rhymes, so that helps. So my practice I started 2.5 years ago, and as you mentioned, we focus on residential, but at this point, really all things housing. And we are a completely virtual firm from inception, which has really helped in this time, this year, to keep us resilient and surviving. Just was serendipitous that it happened that way. In terms of structure, so I have a business plan for my company that's sort of a very long-term future planning goal that has sort of an umbrella corporation structure with multiple different facets and components underneath it. So starting that, I wanted to start with the easiest part, the part that I knew, which is the architecture practice. So EVIA Studio is actually a sole proprietorship. I did that because it was so simple to start, and also because in California, which is where we're based, you would either have to do a sole proprietorship or a corporation. You can't do an architecture firm as an LLC in California. So there are some tricky restrictions to the legal structure in that state. And just to begin with, that's where I started. But at the same time, I also created an LLC under the same name, thinking about that larger structure. in order to provide some consulting services, non-architectural related, and then grow that into what will become sort of the overall corporation down the line. So I actually have two companies at this point, which is the architecture firm sole proprietorship and then the LLC. The long-term plan is to evolve that into a B Corp or a benefit corporation, because strong part of our values is that we support and enhance the lives of people, both internally and externally, and that really speaks to our values. So that's the final plan there.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
David, would you be able to tell us about GMB?
Yeah, hi, thanks everybody. So glad to be joining you. My sort of personal history, I think you heard a little about that. I've been with GMB my entire career. We are a 52-year-old company. And I'll start with the answer and then talk about the journey. Our structure is an ESOP. And the journey that we took to get there 52 years ago, of course I wasn't around, we were founded by a single architect. He set us up as a C corporation at that time, so we had multiple shareholders. And throughout that 52-year history, we had many different shareholders along that pathway. It was sort of starting to split, a lot of different people involved. And so 5 years ago, I became the president. I'd been in the company for 15 years at that point already, and I knew a lot about it. I had understood a lot of things. I was a shareholder. I was a board member. And then when I was elected to be the president, we really got serious about our purpose in the world and fighting for what we believe in, which is people, and making sure that people are able to learn, to grow, and to be able to give. And that really became a big part of our mission. We have 130 employees. We're in 4 different cities around the Midwest, and we focus entirely on education. So we do all K-12 and higher ed work. And so the belief that we're here to make the world better by making lives better for students, teaching them how to learn. We also fundamentally believe that's true about our employees as well. And we are basically solely trying to make our lives for our employees better. And all of that kind of revelation led us to looking at what our business structure should be and really wanting to align who we were from a business corporation structure with our purpose and our cause. And that led us to look at the ESOP as an option. So ESOP, if you don't know, stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan. We, a year ago, transferred 100% of our ownership from our old shareholders, which were 16 individuals, and the amount was sort of spread differently amongst all of them, to 100% all of our stock is owned by our employees now. So at the end of every year, basically all of our employees get a small distribution of that stock, and they grow their own personal stock wealth as the company gets bigger and grows along with it as well. So as a result of that, we actually had to change our company structure from a C Corp to an S Corp, because there's some other business advantages for us to do that. Because in an ESOP, basically the primary shareholder is a retirement benefit plan. And so retirement benefit plans don't pay taxes. And so if we create ourselves as an S Corp, if we change from the C Corp to the S Corp, we become a pass-through entity, like Christian said, and the taxation passes right through to the retirement plan, which doesn't pay taxes. So we get an immediate saving benefit from a taxation perspective as well, that basically as a company, we don't end up paying the corporate tax anymore. As a C Corp, and I can talk a little bit about that if anybody's interested in kind of the C Corp structure, the way that it worked, which was actually another reason why we love the ESOP. We, at the end of every year, essentially had to empty out all of our cash out of the company, because whatever's left at the end of the year, we pay taxes on. So either we pay the taxes on all the money that stays in the company, or we just flush it all out. And so most C Corp shareholder structures that you see will do that. They'll flush out all their cash. They'll distribute all the money to the shareholders at the end of the year that try to end up with zero money in the bank so they don't pay taxes. This now allows us to build equity, build wealth in the company, retain money year over year. And so like Leah, sort of this fortunate thing that happened to us is we changed to that structure last year. We were able to save a bunch of money and put it in the bank at the end of the year, which we'd never done before. And then we have this year happen with COVID. And it was really a very fortunate blessing for us to be able to have that cash on hand, which helped us get through some of the tough times in March and April. So it ended up being a real benefit for us as well.
Awesome. Thank you, David, for commenting on how your purpose statement also impacts your business structure. Christian, would you be able to address that, how your purpose statement influences that?
How our business culture kind of is reflected in the business entity structure? Is that the question?
Yeah, that was the question.
Or Leah?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, sure. So I guess from a very kind of basic and rudimentary standpoint, it is a partnership between a father and a son. So we were trying to figure out how could we be most fair to one another as we work towards this first phase, and then what that second phase becomes. So from just a very, like I said, a very just like nuts and bolts, what is easiest and what is most fair, that's how we structured it. Now, I'm glad Leah brought up the B Corporation, and in my time with JAMB, JAMB is an LLC, and JAMB was created to help small firms stay small, act big, and do good. So there is this kind of overwhelming push from inside of JAMB to move us as an LLC to a certified B Corp. And in doing so, that kind of informs where PJA is headed as a cultural entity. We take great pride in the fact that for the last 4 years, we've been recognized as one of AA Pennsylvania's firms fostering emerging professionals. And in that, you have to show that you satisfy 3 levels of criteria in your investment in emerging professionals. So it's something that we, and the ESOP, I'm glad that David spoke a little bit about it, because that's something that I'm very sensitive to as the son of the owner. How do I show a real level of interest in my employees and who might eventually become shareholders, and how do I retain talent if just from 20 feet away it's just his company, and it'll be that once dad retires. So for us as a small firm with 5 people, as those emerging professionals are becoming licensed architects and they become established professionals, thinking about how we keep the talent that we have, and how do we entice additional employees to come on board. All of that kind of wraps into where we're going in phase 2.
Thank you.
So we've talked about most of the cons of your legal entities. Most of the pros. What are some of the cons that you've realized? Especially, I'm interested in hearing the ESOP, mostly the cons, because it's such a different structure typically.
Yeah, I'll jump into that. So we have only been an ESOP for a year, so sort of understanding maybe what might be the cons. We did a lot of looking into ESOPs and trying to understand what those potential pitfalls might be. And one of the things that I think you hear pretty regularly is shareholders, especially when you have just like a few shareholders of a company, they care for that company because, man, it is theirs. They own it. Christian, you're going to speak to this, like, you don't want that to fail. This is your baby, and you have so much passion invested in that. The danger of an ESOP is that suddenly does nobody feel, because it's so diversely spread over 130 people, that do people not have that same sense of like, if this thing fails, that's me that's going down, versus it's just a job and I'll move on to the next one, and so what, who cares? It's my retirement piece of this pot and it'll be something else in the future. So I think there was some trepidation on our part of how do we really communicate well to our employees that this is theirs, and their success can be very much tied to the success of the company, because we want them to care for it and love it. And it creates, you have to create a strong culture of trust. You have to create a strong culture of empowerment. So all the employees feel that level of responsibility. And if you don't have kind of that corporate structure to go along with the ownership structure, then you have the potential of losing people along that path. So that's for sure one of the big pitfall dangers that we know that we could fall into.
Yeah, that makes sense. Leah, in balancing both a LLC and a sole proprietorship, what are some of the cons that you've come across trying to do that?
Yeah, it's been a little tricky trying to understand, how to structure this overall arching vision of an umbrella corporation with different components that fit in it, and how do they relate to one another. In balancing the two so far, I think the biggest challenge that we've had is in setting up as a sole proprietorship. It's sort of like my negative is the positive of the other options. I am the sole owner, and yet we're creating this culture that operates from a personal accountability and leadership standpoint, more like an ESOP. But I don't have the capability to reward my team in the same way that you could with an ESOP or even a corporation with shareholders where you're receiving distributions. So on one hand, I would really love to treat my team like I could in this corporation, but I can't as a sole proprietorship. So I'm currently in the process of transitioning, which has been a little bit further complicated this year because I have entered into negotiations for a potential merger with another architecture firm that's a corporation. So there's a few different things at play, but I'd say that the biggest challenge for me is wanting to reward my team and incentivize them to feel like they have skin in the game, and not being able to do that as a sole proprietor. The other challenge, of course, is liability. I mean, as a sole proprietor, you have the worst coverage in terms of liability, but I've been told as an architect, you're on the hook anyway, so just make sure you have good insurance.
That makes sense. So how do you incentivize your employees since you can't do it monetarily?
I have made everything in my business structure very transparent. And from the very first day that I bring on a new team member, I explain to them the overall business plan and leave the offer open for them to follow this journey with us and really build the business together. And it's sort of this level of trust that we have to build, that they trust that I will reward them in the end. But I don't hide anything from my team. I keep everything online. We have everything on a Google Drive. They can read the business plan. They can see all of the financial information for the company. We talk about salary transparently. So we've been able to create this platform of trust, but just by me laying everything out on the table and then asking them to contribute in terms of creating those plans and moving us forward as a team together. We have retreats where we get together to design and build the company. We have regular meetings on a monthly basis to grow our education, both internally, teaching one another, and also hosting external education sessions. So I do sort of support them in a way that's above and beyond what you might see in a typical sole proprietor. But ultimately, it comes down to trust and transparency. And so far, I haven't had anyone leave, so it's working pretty well.
Thank you. Be able to describe how GMB creates a culture of trust, and how the hierarchy system might affect that, and also the team's culture.
Yeah. So a big piece of our culture that we have really worked hard at building and changing over the past few years is this idea of really empowering all of our employees to be able to do what they need to do in the company without a hierarchical structure. So we've really, and we had 52 years of history to have to slowly begin to break down, because we were a very traditional type of company originally, where you have principals in charge, you've got basically people managing other people, and very sort of top-down hierarchical structure. And so we've really tried to break that down to not have hierarchy in our company, which is difficult. We've used a model that we based on initially kind of conceptually. There's a book called Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal that describes how the Army actually went through a process of trying to break down their command and control hierarchy when they were doing some of the operations in the Middle East, and they needed to act quicker, more agile, and more flexible. And so we really looked at that kind of a model and said, well, that's really what architecture needs to be as well, right? It needs to be agile and flexible. And when we were a small company at 20 people, we could act very agilely and flexibly. When we grew into 100 people, it's a much different beast, and it's harder to control. And so you end up sort of building these structural command and control models to help that. And we wanted to break that down. And so we went to this model that we call Team of Teams, which is basically a network of teams that are all nested together. Each team has a purpose that they're trying to accomplish, and they have full autonomy over that decision-making of that purpose. Where their purpose touches another team's purpose, they have to communicate and talk about it and make decisions together. But it's not, there's no hierarchy, and somebody who is an intern in the company has as much say over what might happen as somebody who's been there for 35 years, because whoever has the right information at the time is the person who needs to make the decision. And so that gives us a lot of agility and flexibility. There's a lot of mindset to that we've had to overcome, of old mindset, and frankly, it just takes time to break that down. But that's one of the big things that we've tried to work on, is building that nested teams model together. There's a book called Reinventing Organizations. That's kind of another book that talks about a lot of corporate structures and different types and models for corporate structures. That was another influential book for us to discover kind of like how the future corporate business models might start looking. And so that was a heavy influence on us.
Awesome, thank you. So I think it's a good transition to introducing the JAMB Collective. So Christian, could you touch on what the JAMB Collective is, and then how you bring different firms into a more cohesive team?
Sure. So I have a good answer for the first part. And then the second answer, as Leah knows, has been a little bit of like fits and starts. So October of 2017, the American Institute of Architects put together a practice innovation lab that brought 60 individuals together down in DC and split them into 10 teams of 6. We met on a Thursday night, and on Saturday morning, you had to pitch your idea for what the future of architectural business practice was going to be. So the 6 of us arrived there and worked through Friday afternoon with what we thought was going to be, our business plan. And we met with one of the jurors, Susan Chen she was from New York City, and I forget where she's from, like the Land Trust of New York City. But she walks in and she says, "This is pretty bad. This is such a terrible business model. I don't know. Almost like, I don't know if you guys should show up tomorrow morning. Like, go home and get some sleep." So we scrapped that, and we cleared off our whiteboards, and we got back to work, and we stumbled upon this idea of how could we empower small architecture firms so that they could compete at a level that large architecture firms are used to competing at. And the numbers are such, this is from the AIA, but of 21,000 architecture firms in the country, 6% have 50 or more people. That same 6% accounts for 54% of the billings in the country. So now you've got 46% of billings being divvied out amongst 94% of the architecture firms, and 77%, so almost 80%, 8 in 10 architecture firms have less than 9 people. So we thought that there would be value in tapping into a network of those small firms and allowing them to share either resources or, setting it up so that JAMB has those resources to be able to offer to the small firms. And then the part it's been with us from our kind of core founding is this idea of JAMB to community. So a certain percentage of the revenue every year gets earmarked for, we're calling them JAMB grants, but the idea is that member firms can apply for them and take that money that they're granted and help either offset pro bono services or give back to a design collaborative in their community. So that's kind of the thing that like a carrot for us in terms of doing good through JAMB. So that's kind of where we are. We have about 20 firms and we're in this kind of beta phase. And it's, if you're going to found a company, I don't recommend you do it with 4 other full-time architects, because it's very difficult to get time outside of work to devote on something else that's kind of like your hobby or your pet project. And also 6 founders is a lot. So just recently, Abby Brown, who's our managing partner, Abby and I stepped into a managing partner role in the LLC. So now decisions start with us, they go through us. The other 4 founders are on kind of more of an advisory role. And we've actually found that's helped us gain a little bit of momentum. And that's kind of where we're looking as we transition into kind of starting to dig into the pinch points and the pain points of our member firms, so that we can determine what value JAMB can actually bring to them. The idea of a network, the idea of sharing resources, it's all nice, from a kind of holistic standpoint, but how do we show and demonstrate value to our member firms? That's the next step for us. And getting, Leah as a principal and a firm in our ecosystem, and kind of digging down into how do we help? How can JAMB help Leah navigate sole proprietor to an LLC, to merging with, a corporation, that kind of stuff, and let Leah get on to doing the architecture that she does so well.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense.
Leah, outside of an increase in revenue, is there a metric that your firm uses to measure success in regards to how your firm is structured? So, what really makes your firm healthy?
Yeah, metrics are something that we, as a young firm, we're not really in the phase where we actually have all of those nailed down that we can look back over the years and determine what success is. So it's a moving target for us. We have regular conversations about happiness and challenges, and I think, from a well-being standpoint, we are only successful if our team is healthy in that case. We have implemented systems to touch in with our clients post-occupancy and understand their happiness as it relates to the services that we provided. And to me, that's really more important than the financial success, is whether or not we're doing good. But the KPIs of our company is definitely a to be determined element. I do have in our business plan a whole list of things that we would like to track. One of them that we've implemented this year is our percentage of profits that we are donating back to the community. So we started a donating matching program this year in response really to the Black Lives Matter movement. We realized that we needed to kick some of these into gear sooner than later. So that's one of them. Another time would be volunteering or pro bono work, and so on and so forth. But it's definitely slow deciding what we can implement and when, but there are a lot of ambitions there. it's helpful, I'd be happy to share that plan too with you guys. I don't know how many architecture firm business plans you have seen, but I'm happy to give that to you to look over.
David, that question too, like what makes your firm healthy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we actually underwent a strategic planning process last year, 2019, which we did as a firm-wide year-long strategic planning process. So everybody was involved in talking through what are the things that we wanted to make our goals. The big thing that sort of fell out of that at the end was this concept of saying, hey, we really want to focus 100% on education. That was like 80% of the work we were doing. And we just said, it's time to go all in on that. And so we set ourselves with a goal of like, we want to touch 1 million students' lives, and there's no time frame to it. So like, that's our kind of our big hairy goal is like, how do we get to a million, like 1 million kids and change the lives of 1 million kids. So that's sort of like the big purpose goal. And then we break it down. We use a system called the EOS system for our regular planning and talking about strategic planning and how we're making progress on things. So that gets broken into like that big goal, which is like, okay, who knows when we'll accomplish it? It could be 10 years from now. From there to we've got 5-year goals, and then we've got annual goals. And so like our strategic plan, we talked about company-wide, what makes us successful. It's things like how we said, how do we add more flexibility into our work lives? And then 2020, we would just like slam dunk that one. That was awesome. So lots of flexibility in our lives right now. Then we talked about like, how do we change our client experience? And we've got some goals for that as well. And we've talked about how do we expand our geography and our footprint for our company. So those are all the things that we look at and measure very regularly. And we set 90-day little increments of progress, and we make goals within those 90 days, and we check them off, and then we set the next goal to move towards the bigger goals, always with this sort of large goal in mind of like, how do we touch 1 million students' lives?
Thank you. Christian, would you be able to answer that too? What makes
I could speak to that. As a small firm with the two principals being related to one another, the cliche is like, we want our small firm to be like a family. But, you know, I kind of come from a dysfunctional one. So like, why would we actually want that? And it puts, you know, an undue kind of burden on, you know, I already have a family. Why do I have to be a family at work? So we actually had some conversations about when we are like most successful and when we're kind of at our happiest is when our employees are engaged in kind of just the things that we suggest that they do and encourage them to do. So everybody has a stipend every year for some continuing ed. This is over and above whatever AE credits you need, you know, for your license. But, you know, whether it's Revit training or if somebody wants to take a VR course, how engaged and interested the employees are in kind of seeking those things out and coming to us and saying, hey, I'd like to use this now, or, you know, I just had a big burn on this project. I'm going to take some time off. The more engaged they are up and down and throughout the company, the better we operate. So kind of moving forward, and this has been a real test, you know, with COVID is, you know, how do we keep that morale up? How do we keep our staff engaged? And we've done a lot of listening. You know, at first we thought, okay, we got to get on Zoom. We got to stay in front of everybody. And they didn't actually want too much FaceTime, which is okay, you know, but we're not forcing anybody to do that kind of stuff. So we're kind of taking our cues from the staff and the employees and how comfortable they are. Another thing that we've done, so when my dad and I partnered up, he is, you know, traditional, he is old school. He also loves production, and business development is not his strong suit. So in 2012, the idea was, okay, I can't just be another, like one of you in this hierarchy of now I'm going to do production and eventually you'll hand off your business development acumen to me because there isn't any. So it was, I'll step into that role, but we should have some idea of gauging how well we're doing. And we have some numbers in place of repeat clients, and then also a percentage of how many new clients we're bringing in and how many of them we're retaining, or how many are just one-offs. And you know, by and large, it's been probably 3 years that we started that. So that first year, we're like not even sure what our numbers should be. But things are moving, we think, in a good direction. And it's kind of laying the foundation for, you know, as I age and as, you know, additional staff members and employees are, you know, empowered to take, you know, leadership positions within the firm, they're all not stuck with, you know, the old founder, and we can kind of pass those relationships through the firm. So engagement, client retention, and kind of new you know, turnover. Those are kind of what we look at, and just, you know, listening and keeping an ear out for, you know, how we can best support our employees.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm interested, and this is personally my business plan, but how, and you guys have already kind of touched on it, how do you handle mentorship programs, especially in small firms with Leah and Christian, but then also in GMB, a much larger firm with more people in it? And then David, you can start.
Yeah, I can kick it off. So I think that's a great question, that one, frankly, that we wrestle with quite a bit. And I can sort of tell you where we're at in our journey and all of that. So originally, a long time ago, you know, basically mentorship was just, it was much more organic. You'd just be kind of part of the firm, and like when I started, you kind of found somebody that you admired and enjoyed working with, and they worked with you a lot. And it was sort of the junior architect, senior architect relationship that a lot of people are probably familiar with. You get really tutored under that person, and you follow in their path, and you do what they do, and that's how you kind of learn. And as we again got larger, that got harder. And so in the more recent years, we've gone to more of a formal type of mentorship coaching relationship, where our employees will get assigned different, an onboarding mentor when they first come into the company. Then they'll get assigned a discipline mentor, and then a coach as well. And then we're actually currently talking about how do we find the next evolution of that system. And what we're talking about is really looking at getting people, allowing people to pick who they want for a time period, because they are interested in learning a new skill or a new thing, and they see somebody else in the firm who has that, and basically writing a proposal to say, hey, I'm interested in getting better at public speaking. I'm interested in getting better at technical drawings. I'm interested in getting better at whatever the thing might be. And then basically writing a proposal to that person to say, hey, I want to learn from you. I think you're pretty good at this. And then the two of them will talk together about what the plan would be to upskill that person in that area and the length of time that it would take. And basically allowing everybody in the company to pick their own mentor coaches based on skills that they think would be good for them to learn. And that's going to be across the board. So from top to bottom. So I can pick mentors and people that I admire that are good at things that are maybe skills that I don't have, and really letting everybody kind of choose their own adventure in that way.
And Leah, how do you handle mentorship in your firm?
Yeah, I wrote a few things down. This was actually particularly challenging for a virtual firm. a small firm and a virtual firm. So from the beginning, we've focused on creating systems that educate and mentor one another. And we have really fully embraced this idea of mutual mentorship. In our firm, we treat everybody pretty equally as well, similar to David. We're on sort of this horizontal structure and recognize that everyone has skills and talents that are unique to them that would be valuable to somebody else. So it's not this idea of just senior or more experienced people mentoring and guiding the younger staff, but that relationship flows both ways and sort of always across the board. So a couple things that we've implemented. Twice a month we have educational sessions. One of them is an internal session where somebody in our team puts together a presentation on something that they are skilled in. That's a highly sought after skill by the rest of the team, and then they teach us about how they do what they do. We record these so that you can refer back to them. And then the second session that we do in a month is that we identify a skill set that we want to learn that we don't know within our team, and we either find a webinar or bring in a guest speaker to talk to our team about that. Another way that we handle this is as a virtual team where everybody's sort of practicing at different time zones and different times of day, flexibility for what works for them. Asynchronous communication is really important to us. So in order to do that, we have a couple things in play. One of them is we have a pretty healthy Slack channel system with multiple different educational channels on different topics that people can post in, ask for help on, and then others respond to at their leisure to sort of help guide. Another thing is that we have started implementing Loom recordings. So it takes a long time to put together a written tutorial, but if you really want to show somebody what you're doing and you can't bring somebody right next to you to say, hey, look at my screen, I'll show you how this works. Using a screen recording tool where you can just talk to the camera and record what you're doing and then post that for the entire team to look at, not only once, but come back to, or when new staff join, they have this whole library of Loom recordings on different topics that they can study. And that's sort of this like growing, living body of education that we have for our team. And then on a one-on-one level, I make a point to meet with my team members bi-weekly to have career development discussions where we set goals and talk about the things that they want to focus on for their own career development. And then a more recent development is we recently adopted the tool Monday.com, which is sort of this project management platform, but really is a pretty flexible platform to use however you'd like. And one way we're using it is tracking data on team members' tasks. So understanding by member what's the type of work that they're doing most often, and what's the type of work that they haven't had the opportunity to do or aren't doing, so that we can sort of shift people and adjust on teams the type of roles that they're fulfilling to make sure that we have a very well-rounded team and that everyone's getting the opportunities to do the work they want to do.
Makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So we're kind of acutely sensitive to this because we're two old white guys that run an architecture firm, and we're kind of like the last people you want to be taking mentorship advice from in 2020. But in all seriousness, we've taken it upon, we take very seriously this idea of mentoring. And we try to stay away from like up and down because it still is it's still connotes hierarchy. But this idea that all of us have skills that are in some ways unique to the staff at large. So just two anecdotes. Sarah, she's been with us for 8 years, and one of the things that we identified in terms of sitting down in one of her reviews, and I asked them to come up with, where are places where they'd like to develop further professionally, or where might their weaknesses be? And this early on, being in front of people, public speaking was always something that she felt she could be better versed in. And as a professor at Jefferson, I was able to get her a Revit course that she could teach. And this was, 5 or 6 years ago. So kind of like 2 or 3 years out of school, she's back teaching a course. And that was just kind of one of the ways that we made sure that we were kind of helping, our employees develop in areas where they thought they might be a little deficient in. And that we, as 5 people, will come in and talk to us at lunch. That doesn't quite get, that across. And then we also don't have the types of projects where every month we're giving a talk in front of a registered community organization or a zoning board. That those opportunities don't come across our office all that often. So we're creative with how we got Sarah that help. And then also another staff member, Liz, has her background in media and communication, and that's something that none of us have a background in. So kind of giving her an opportunity to teach us what she knows about that, and then how we can spin that forward into messaging, branding. And we've put more effort into those initiatives with everybody going remote and trying to kind of keep that morale up. And we've been recording our sessions of software training, mostly in Revit. For us, like Leah said, it's nice to be able to go back to it. And now it goes into our library and it becomes a resource for other, future staff members. But knowing that, if you guys have probably heard this, but it's, the old adage of what if we invest in our people and they leave? And the flip side of that is, well, what if we don't invest and they stay? So for us, it's been this, we run with who we have, and we play the game with our teammates, and we do the best we can for everybody while looking out for each other.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to jump in one more thing there, just because as we're talking about sort of knowledge and knowledge sharing, I'd be reticent not to say we use a product called From Knowledge Architecture, which is a firm that basically creates knowledge sharing platform that's specifically for architecture firms. And so if you guys are curious, just go check that out. But that is a huge part of our culture, is that the product From Knowledge Architecture. Synthesis is the software name, but they've got a whole community. You can go online and check more out about that.
Okay, Leah, you brought up that you are salary transparent. How does that, because there's the saying that it may just create infighting, why does this person make more money than me? So does that come down to that trust thing, or how do you kind of weigh that salary transparency in your firm?
Yeah, we actually started with educational session about rates, and both paid rates to employees and then billable rates, and explaining how those are calculated. So it was really more a bigger talk about what people should be getting paid. And then I did a lot of research after we had already agreed to rates for different team members, which should have done first, on what everyone should be getting paid based off of their experience level, and similar salaries for that type of role in that location, and laid that all out first, and created some ranges for plus or minus 15% so that we could see whether or not we're in the right target. And interestingly enough, I found, one of my team members, I think 2 of us, me and her, were in the right range. 1 was low and 2 were high. And so it did become a bit of a learning and awkward moment for me as a firm owner, realizing like, oh, we're not quite where we should be and need to make some adjustments. But I think just explaining the methodology and explaining the targets of what people should be getting paid, and then committing to making changes so that we're in a healthy place both for our team members and the firm overall, is how we got it over that issue of people asking why one salary is higher than the other. It wasn't just, hey, everybody, here's what we all make. There's a lot more depth behind why we should be making what we're making and why we're not making what we're making. And I did end up making adjustments to salaries after that conversation. And as a team now, we're still in the process, we're developing sort of a pay table for different roles, but also exploring the idea of just doing a straight flat salary for all team members. I'm 95% in favor of doing this. I think it's a really interesting idea. Everyone else is on board except for our senior architect, which I think is understandable. So there's a little bit of strategizing and figuring out if that's something that'll work and be able to retain more senior level talent. But I love the idea of just leveling the playing field and saying this is what everyone should be making. Everyone has equal value, so we're all going to be making a living wage, and leave it at that.
Well, I guess if there aren't any other questions, first of all, good job, guys. Great conversation, great session. Thank you to all of you. Really appreciate you as our guest speakers. Appreciate you giving to us, and lots of inspiring and interesting examples. So good luck to all of you in the future, and really appreciate you helping us out here tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. This is great. And if anyone has follow-up questions, I'm available if you want to share the email address, and happy to continue conversations with anyone interested.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. And I was talking to Jeff, before a couple of days ago. I teach professional practice to undergrad architecture students. So I think figure out a way to make yourself indispensable to the firm where you go work. And I think right now, one of the ways to do that is looking at automated systems that you could bring to architecture firms are usually slow on the uptake. So I'm talking about things like Zapier, Airtable, things that you could learn easily and then bring that to a firm. If I hire somebody tomorrow, they're not going to convince me that an S Corp wasn't the right idea, and they probably didn't pay good enough attention in school to be able to convince me otherwise. But if they came to me and they said, look, I got a way to automate email responses, I've got a way to automate leads and get them into an Excel spreadsheet, those are the tools that are going to make you and your generation, that much more valuable on the jump to architecture firms. So that's kind of what I would hope to leave you all with.
That's great advice, Christian. Thank you for that. And if it's okay with all of you, I will share your email addresses in our class notes here, and encourage all of you students to reach out. If you have further questions, reach out and say thank you, things like that. And again, really appreciate what all of you are doing. Thank you.
Yeah, and reach out, because I know so many times I had the opportunity to reach out to somebody, soon after something like this, and I didn't. And then maybe like 6 months or 2 years later, there was a reason for me to reach out, and I never created that connection. Yeah. And even if it's just an email, people remember. People remember names. They remember, meeting you. So just follow up. Even if you thought it was a bad one, or if you thought it was bad and you just want to tell me it was good, I'm happy to not read through that or too much into it. But follow up, set the tone, start your networking now. It's easy.
I totally second that. And above and beyond just us, what I thought was amazing and blew my mind is that anybody that you're interested in the world and you think what they're doing is fascinating, reach out to them. It is surprising how many of them will be delighted by hearing from you and want to share everything they know with you. Mm-hmm. And those connections and that information is the most inspiring relationships that you can have as you develop as an architect. So definitely 100% reach out, network, grow those connections, and they will propel you forward.
Yeah. I'm going to reach out to David after this.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, best of luck this semester, and hopefully we'll see what the Sharks have to say in December.
Yeah. Can we watch your pitches?
Can we be the Sharks?
I'd love to be a Shark. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.
Careful what you ask for.
All right.
Thank you. You.
Well, I thought a big takeaway was when David was talking about ESOP and the strong culture of trust and empowerment, and how the employees feel responsibility for the company because they have a stake in the company. So it really builds employee satisfaction.
Mine is the same. Even each of them has different organizational structure. The common pattern is creating a strong culture of community, such as creating employees, investing employees, being more transparent, and strong communication are important to have that. And for some successful business means successful employees.
Yeah, and then kind of going off of that, when they were talking about GMB's mentor program and how the mentee got to choose what they felt like they needed to learn and people who best fit that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah,
Switching the roles.
Yeah.
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Good idea.
I want to be an intern that does that.
Yeah, and then lastly, when Christian there at the end said, try to make yourself indispensable to a firm by bringing like software skills or anything of that nature. I felt like that could kind of lend itself into a business setting. Try to make yourself indispensable to your client by bringing things that nobody else really, or nobody can fill for them.
Cool.
Cool.
Okay.
Awesome.